Hi, my name is natekokernot and I want to welcome you to my channel. Today I'm switching gears to talk about history, and specifically about the idea that history repeats itself over and over again. There's a couple of ideas that I will share about why history does repeat itself, one of which is called the free energy principle, and I'll talk about that in a later video. And there's the basic spiritual idea as well, that the same lessons need to be repeated until we interpret the lessons the correct way, and that to some extent at least is why they are repeated. My first introduction to this idea was from A Course in Miracles. Passages like the following one are scattered throughout the text. Quote, "Such is each seeming life, the interval from birth to death and on to life again, a repetition of an instant gone by long ago, which cannot be relived. And all of time is but the mad belief that what is over still is here and now. Forgive the past and let it go, for it is gone. You stand no longer on the ground that lies between the worlds. You have gone on and reached the world that lies at heaven's gate. There is no hindrance to the will of God, nor any need that you repeat again a journey which was over long ago. Look gently on each other, and behold the world in which perception of your hate has been transformed into a world of love." End quote. This passage certainly points to the purpose for going around and around again. The story of the separation, according to ACIM, is that in the moment that the Son of God had the tiny mad idea of separation, God introduced the correction in that same instant. The quiet voice in all of us that remembers. It's known to course students as the Holy Spirit, and it remembers that heaven is indeed here and now. The function of time, according to ACIM, is, well, I'll just read the passage about it and let it speak for itself. Quote, "The Holy Spirit interprets time's purpose as rendering the need for it unnecessary. Thus does he regard the function of time as temporary, serving only his teaching function, which is temporary by definition. His emphasis is therefore on the only aspect of time which can extend to the infinite, for now is the closest approximation of eternity which this world offers. And it is in the reality of now, without past or future, that the beginning of the appreciation of eternity lies. For only now is here, and only it presents the opportunities for the holy encounters in which salvation can be found." End quote. It wasn't too long after I dived into A Course in Miracles with devotion that I came across the book Generations by the historians William Strauss and Neil Howe. It was first published in 1991. These two historians make a very compelling argument for history being cyclical in nature, using the United States as its subject of study. For starters, you can look at the years of our major conflicts and do the math to see a simple pattern. We had World War II from 1929 to 1946, which reached its climax in 1944. Before that, the Civil War crisis from 1857 to 1865, which climaxed in 1864. Before that, we had the American Revolution from 1773 to 1794, climaxing in 1788 by their estimates. They go back further than this in their rigorous studies of this pattern. They go back to the period from 1675 to 1706, which they called the Glorious Revolution crisis. They say this crisis climaxed in 1691 and was called the First American Revolutionary Period by historians. Before that, there was the Armada crisis from 1569 to 1597, peaking in 1588. And before that, the War of the Roses crisis, which lasted from 1455 to 1487, peaking in 1485. That's as far back as they take it, basically to the time of Columbus's voyage to the Americas. So let's look at these climax dates and do some simple math. If we take the average of these periods between crisis climax, we get roughly 91 years in between them. Neil Howe, who is the only one of these authors still alive and who has a podcast called Demography Unplugged, where he tracks his predictions and compares them to recent trends, he often makes the statement that they can predict the climate, not the exact weather, with their framework for history. And we might expect the climax in this current cycle to happen around 2030, but it's not an exact science of prediction. Tomorrow, I'll get into the weeds a little more about some other aspects of Strauss and Howe's theory and the research they did that supports it. It's very interesting in that it weaves into the history a generational theory which uses archetypes to denote a series of 4 generational cycles and uses the tensions between the various generations as well as the periods of dominance for each generation to map out an even more precise understanding of the shifting dynamics. Today, though, I want to use the rest of the time instead to talk about what this might imply if, by design, history does indeed repeat itself. I'm not saying this definitively. I'm not saying this is proof of anything, but it's definitely an interesting pattern which might open us up to imagining that there is more happening behind the scenes than meets the eyes. That's what we have intuition for, to fill in the unexplained spaces between the information that we've taken in with our sensory systems. While we could get caught up in the blame game and say that this crisis is happening because of the bad actors on the other side, this system of understanding history may lend itself to the Shakespearean saying, from As You Like It, that all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. Perhaps this world is just a dream after all. Perhaps that is the lesson that is to be gleaned from all of this. Time's only purpose is to render itself unnecessary. I suppose that someone with a mechanistic, materialistic perspective on reality and history could devise their own mechanistic explanation for why history seems to repeat itself, and that it could sound very logical, and there's no need for me to judge it, at least until I hear that theory, which I haven't as of yet. All I'm saying is, given the evidence, as well as lots of other evidence that I've pointed to from science and other realms of human study, isn't it at least worthwhile to dig a little deeper into this possibility, which has been around as an idea for millennia now, that the world we experience with our senses is not reality at all, but a simulation of some sort or another? Shouldn't we at least consider this possibility? The implications of making this shift in thinking are quite extensive. I have given so much time over the past 10 years or so to thinking about all these various implications. One is that it would then be correct to assume that there are no real villains and no real heroes beyond the stage. They're all just actors, and everyone is just playing the roles given them to play according to some cosmic script. All the actors, both the villains and the heroes, are likely getting together for drinks after the show. We go from blaming the aggressors in the drama to just appreciating that it is a drama. We lose our attachments to the outcome as well, knowing everything will be back to normal after the curtain call. We stop taking the dramas of this world, both personal and collective, as seriously when we start to conceive of the idea that maybe, perhaps, Jesus was right when he said our true home is in heaven. In fact, we might stop thinking in terms of right and wrong altogether and get back to considering true and false instead, which are two opposing ideas that have been sliding together down a very slippery slope since postmodernism came along. If we cling to our personal views on right and wrong, which we have to admit by this time seem not to be universally agreed upon, we are inevitably attracted to judgment, blame, and also sometimes self-judgment and shame. None of these are going to bring peace. That is, if it's even peace we want. Howe and Strauss refer to these periods of heightened conflict as fourth turnings, and Howe insists that we are in the midst of one right now. They have a seasonal analogy for the 4 smaller chapters that divide up each saeculum, or approximately 80-year period, and the fourth turning is winter, of course. By the way, isn't it interesting that the saeculum is roughly the same as our life expectancy, meaning that all of us, if not for unnatural deaths getting in the way, will get to experience all 4 of these seasons in the span of our lifetimes. So the lesson for me right now is that spring is coming. I can smell it in the air already. I can accept that all the chaos and drama that we are collectively experiencing has a purpose behind it, and I hope that purpose is a major paradigm shift in the style of Galileo's and Copernicus that will be a massive evolutionary step forward in the maturity of human consciousness towards accepting the truth about the nature of reality with a capital R. That's what all the spiritual thinkers are thinking right now. So we're all very optimistic, even as the world seems to be unraveling. And there might be a good argument that the peace of mind that gives us is beneficial to the world rather than naive. Because, let's face it, people who are feeling at peace tend to want to extend that peace to those around them. So each of us who accepts this perspective is one more individual choosing not to contribute to the building chaos. I hope that this makes sense, and please, I beg you, engage with me if you disagree. Leave a comment below. I am open to engaging with you in a respectful, loving way, even as we disagree. And please like and subscribe if you're finding these ideas helpful. Have a wonderful day, full of blessings and miracles, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.